Hello. No luck?
Oh, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right. So am I up now? Sorry about that. There's some technical issues. Well, welcome to PCDC and our Pathway to Success program. First of all, I want to thank Shungjo for organizing this program and hosting it for the PCDC Teen Club. My name is John Chin. I'm the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation. First of all, I'm happy to have this program presented to our youth. The youth are our future, and we need to make every investment we can to provide a pathway and support so our youth can become successful individuals as they pursue higher education, post-secondary education. PCDC is a multifaceted organization. We touch upon many different areas, which Shungjo will talk about. But I just wanted to spend a minute to welcome Alice Fay, who's Vice President at Comcast, which is one of the largest employers in Philadelphia and one of the largest employers in downtown Center City, Philadelphia. I know many folks from Comcast. They have thousands of people working for them, all great folks. And I do want to put a plug in for Comcast because not only have I worked with their employees and their leadership, but Comcast actually has a lift zone at our Crane Chinatown Community Center. So we are very thankful for the partnership at the Crane Community Center. We're also thankful for the donations and contributions that Comcast makes to PCDC. We use those funds to invest in affordable housing and also to support a small business corridor. So with that, I just want to acknowledge Alice for joining us today, and I look forward to the talk and the presentation. Shungjo, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Before Alice starts her speech, I do have some ground rules for the virtual workshop. So please mute yourself if you have a question, and you can raise your hand and put your question on the chat as well. So thank you for all you guys cooperate. And also, since John already introduced about PCDC, I will just go quick through about what PCDC are. So PCDC name is Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation. We have been established about more than 50 years, and we have many programs, like we have housing team in our Crane Center to serve people, to help people to apply some benefits, and also to get some grant from the other agency. And we have youth program at Crane Community Center as well to support the sports and the arts for the Chinatown youth. And we also have the commercial corridor and the neighborhood planning. And also we involved with people to get civil engagement. Like last year we did census, and also we provide affordable housing. We create like a couple buildings in North 12th Street for affordable housing there. And we are also planning to have more housing in different districts near our Chinatown. So this is our youth program, and we established in 2008, and we have sports activity. We have free SAT class, and we also do courage prepare, and we have leadership opportunity for the youth to participate with. So currently we are accepting teenagers from 7th to 12th grade, and everything is free. So the only thing you do is to fill out the application form and become our participants. And we also do incentive programs. So if you join and participate well, you will get incentive. And also you will have a chance to do the summer work credit with us as an intern. It's paid intern. So I just save time, I just go through. This is our summer work ready. and we have only have few slots, and now we are still accepting the application, but you will be on the waiting list. So if you have any question about summer paid program, feel free to contact me and my coordinator, Rosalind Yang. So as John mentioned before, we have partnered with Comcast with the Leaf Zone program, and we are the site for the Leaf Zone. So students, if you feel tired about study at home, you can come to Korean Community Center to study. We have free space, free classroom, free high-speed internet. So we open every day from, we open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you come earlier, let me know, and we will have staff open the door, let you guys in. Thank you again for Comcast to support our community. And for the recent event, so tomorrow we have the Asia Women Wellness Day. So it's in Korean as well. So if you plan to come, and you can scan the QR code on the screen, and it starts at 10 tomorrow. And every Friday, PCDC do food distribution. So if you are nearby, please welcome and stop by to grab the free food. So currently, I get email from NAP, NAAP, and there is a very good opportunity for high school graduate senior to apply the scholarship. So here is some information. So after the meeting, I'll share it with you, so you can apply by this link. Okay, so please welcome our speaker, Alice Fei. So Alice Fei is the current Vice President of Human Resource for Comcast, and she has been working in human resource area for more than 20 years. So Alice, I will stop here, and I would like to hear about what your experience about the successful your career pace way. And thank you. And let's please welcome Alice Fei. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon. I'm very excited to be here with all of you, and I might actually take you up on the Lift Zone offer because I'm getting tired of working from my office. So, if it's okay, I'd love to register to come and visit the Lift Zone. But thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you for the time to talk to you all about my career and what I've done so far. At Comcast, I think HR is definitely not a typical occupation and field for Asians. I think, for me, my parents had it took a very long time before they realized what it was that I do. And even now, I don't know if they completely understand what it is that I do. But, in terms of a little bit about my background, I was born in Taipei. My family immigrated here when I was 5 years old. And, had some family members here. So my father wanted to spend some time with his family who he had been separated from for most of his adult life. And so we came to the United States. And, throughout the course of our time here, my parents owned a restaurant, and I grew up as a restaurant kid. So I'm very good at bussing tables and making sure people have their water glasses filled. And, I look back on, what I've been able to accomplish. I think, spending a lot of time in that restaurant industry, I think, has been super helpful for me. I think the ability to multitask, the ability to know what it feels like to be able to work under pressure, to multitask are all things that I feel like, today I need to do in order to be successful in my role. So, as you can kind of see from my bio, I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is, not a very diverse city. Didn't really grow up with a lot of other Chinese, Asian kids in my high school. I was one of two Asians in my entire graduating high school. And so it was really important for me as I was growing up and started thinking about, what was next for me, to spend time somewhere where there was more diversity. I really wanted that in my adult life. So, through my career, I started off in Salt Lake and went to the University of Utah, and started off as a mortgage clerk part-time. And the little company that I was working for at the time had about 50 employees. And I remember my boss at the time said to me, you know, we need to probably start offering what we call Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA. Would you mind, you know, going to the school library and researching what that means and what we need to do? So I went to the university library, looked up FMLA, and wrote a really quick paper on what that was, what it is that we needed to do as a company, and sent that back to my manager. And that was really the start of my HR career. From there, we started to do a lot of hiring. So I had to do a lot of recruiting. I had to do orientation for all those new hires that we brought in. I had to do benefits orientation. I had to help get them on payroll. So, you know, at the time, I didn't really know what HR was. Like I said, you know, really just stumbled on it, you know, quite by luck. And, you know, from there, I continued to grow my career and went from being a human resources clerk to being a generalist, and then ultimately becoming a manager of HR. You know, for those of you that aren't familiar with HR, you know, as a function of an organization, you know, primarily we are responsible for all of the employees in an organization, hiring them, developing them, making sure they get trained on, you know, on all the necessary skills to be successful, making sure that they're happy at work, which is the engagement part of what we do, making sure that we're compensating and providing, you know, the best benefits competitive benefits in our field. And then also managing performance. So making sure our employees understand what's expected of them, and making sure that, you know, leaders are coaching and developing our employees so that they can continue to grow with the organization. So, you know, a lot of the work that we do tends to be behind the scenes, but, you know, also such an instrumental part of an organization, especially when you think about organizations as big as Comcast. So I guess, you know, maybe I'll pause there, see if there's any questions before I kind of go on to the next phase of my career and how I got to where I am. All right, I was going to say, I don't see anything in chat. So anyone have any questions? And if not, I'll keep going. All right. Great. So, you know, so like I was saying, I stumbled onto HR in Salt Lake, and I started working for a mortgage company that had acquired a location here in Hatboro, Pennsylvania. So for anyone who is from the Hatboro area, shout out to Hatboro. But came out here to the Philadelphia area to run HR for that location specifically. Did that for a couple of years when they then decided to move all of the operations down to Jacksonville. So it was the first time in my career where I found myself without a job. Kind of a scary point in my career. You know, we had just moved out here, and, you know, there was kind of two things we could do. We could stay here and look for another job, or go back home to Salt Lake. So I started looking around. You know, I had a leader at the time who said, you know, Alice, for your career, you probably need to work for a large company. At this point, I had only worked for smaller organizations. And so I looked around and I said, well, Comcast seems like a pretty big company, so I'll apply there. I applied at Comcast, really not thinking I would actually get the job there, but, you know, applied, and within a couple of weeks, someone had called me and said, you know, would you mind coming in and interviewing? I came in and interviewed, and then didn't hear anything for a very long time. So I kind of felt like, you know, maybe I didn't nail the interview, maybe I wasn't the right fit. So I continued my job search. And then I think it was almost a month later, they finally called and said that they wanted to offer me a position at Comcast. So I've been with Comcast for almost 17 years. I started at Comcast as a manager, At that time, we were a very small company, smaller company than we are today. And my first role was doing acquisitions. So at that time, we were acquiring a lot of technology companies. And so my job was to basically, evaluate those technology companies, see whether or not they were worthwhile in terms of investment and acquisition. And then if we did decide to make the deal, then my other job was then to make sure that we integrated that company into Comcast. So making sure things like, that the employees got paid on time, that they got a good benefits package, that they were able to access our various systems in order to, submit expenses and things of that nature. So I did that for a number of years. It was a really great experience. Again, being able to multitask, being able to do different things to help the business be successful. I think that's, part of the reason why I've been in this HR function for so long. I love being able to see how, all the hard work that we do pays off and really helps move the business forward. In terms of, HR as a function, like I said, being a restaurant kid really kind of helped me know how to juggle multiple things. It's a relatively fast-paced environment. There's not a lot that is the same day to day. We are contending with, helping our employees with questions that they may have. We are helping leaders who may be facing challenges with some of their employees. We are working with, different functions to make sure that we have the right staffing levels. So there's a lot of variety in the HR function. I think one of the things that I really enjoy is the fact that, I am the person that leaders will go to for advice and counseling when they are stuck with a problem. So, being able to help problem solve and being able to guide leaders through some of the sticky situations that they may encounter during the course of the day, is a good point of satisfaction for me. So maybe I'll pause there. I think I saw a question. Someone was asking about my background and my education. I stumbled into HR really quite by accident. And in terms of my education, I graduated from Villanova with a degree in leadership development and started off at the University of Utah. But then when I moved here, I finished up at Villanova. So Villanova Wildcat grads, proud to say. Any other questions so far? And then I can talk a little bit about, what else it takes to be successful in HR and what, if anyone is interested, maybe what you can possibly do to get into this field. Okay. All right. So I'll talk a little bit about, this career path. Like I said, it's probably not the most traditional career path, but, part of the reason why it's something that I like and, for me personally, it was something that allowed me to do so that, be able to exercise some of the things that I really love. So, admittedly, I am really bad at math and science. So being a doctor, being an accountant, being an engineer was absolutely out of the question. So I started thinking about what are the things that I am good at, and, building relationships, being able to connect with people, being able to do some problem solving, being able to really think through, what's possible solutions there might be to complex problems was really something I really enjoyed doing. And like I said, falling into HR was something that, never really thought that this could be a potential career, but I'm so glad I did find it because, after 17 years, I definitely see myself, retiring as an HR professional, You know, part of what I love about where I am right now in my career is, you know, I have enough years of experience that I can start to influence and shape, you know, young minds of, you know, looking at HR as a possible career as well. You know, there's so many different facets when you start looking at HR, you know, from analytics to recruiting to benefits to compensation, that, you know, depending on kind of where your strengths are, there's definitely a home somewhere in the HR industry for you. So, you know, I see a question here. I'm going to answer this quick question. So were my parents like most Asian parents? I would say yes and no. They were like most Asian parents in that, you know, I think, you know, they, especially my mom, I would say, wanted kind of something more traditional for me, right? And, you know, something, you know, and I see the follow-up question of becoming a doctor or something more, something professional. I think, yes, you know, in some ways, I think that it's easier to explain to their friends and family, you know, when you say you have a doctor or a lawyer in the family, harder to explain when, you know, your daughter works in HR, you know, because it's just not, it's not as common and as traditional. And, you know, it's funny because my parents, you know, even to this day, you know, they know that I work for Comcast. And so I think there are days where I think that they think that I install cable, or that, you know, that I do something with the actual cable product itself. You know, you know, the other thing is, you know, my parents were maybe non-traditional in that, because of the fact that we grew up in Salt Lake, you know, we didn't have a lot of other Asian families around. You know, it was a very small community. I feel like in some ways, you know, having to assimilate in that environment, you know, made them less traditional. They were not, you know, my parents were not pressuring us to, you know, I think they were excited and happy that I went to college, but there was never pressure to say, hey, you need to get to top colleges, you need to do, you know, this, that, and the other. I think they were really good about, you know, about allowing us to, you know, to be ourselves. I think they wanted us to be successful, whatever that looked like. And, you know, I think that helped me in terms of not having that level of pressure to figure out what success looks like for me. And I think, you know, it's been a good journey for me, I know. So, you know, I'll give you kind of the flip side of that, you know, in some ways my parents wanted me to go into the restaurant industry. They wanted me to, you know, to carry on the legacy that they had started. And in some ways, I'm really glad that my little brother is doing that for them. So that way, you know, they can feel that, you know, feel that their legacy is being filled, but allow me to figure out what was going to work for me. You see another really great question here. What is the most difficult thing I faced in my immigrant life? You know, like I said, you know, being the only, you know, one of 2 Asian kids in my graduating class in Salt Lake, you know, it is very difficult. I think part of the reason why I wanted, when I came here to the Philadelphia area, and why I was so interested in getting involved with NAP, which is the organization I think that got me connected with all of you today, is the fact that, you know, I did want to connect back to the Asian community, and, you know, figure out ways that I can give back, maybe share some of my experiences or utilize some of my skills to help the community. You know, not, you know, again, being in Salt Lake, you don't really get as many opportunities to be able to do that. And, you know, it is hard because I think, you know, in addition to being a person of color in Salt Lake, you know, for those of you who are not familiar with Salt Lake, it's the headquarters of the LDS religion, so Mormonism. So, you know, our family did not practice the Mormon religion. So I kind of felt like I had 2 things that I was, you know, that I was kind of having to kind of work through in terms of not only being a person of color, but also not being, you know, someone of the Mormon religion. And, you know, at times it can be isolating, right? And it can, you know, at times it feels like, you know, you don't necessarily always belong. But I think you also try to make the best of it, right? And you find the community of people that you relate to, that you can get, you know, that that you are compatible with, and you kind of form, you start to build your own community, where that's available. So really good questions. Thank you very much. I'll kind of keep rolling because these questions coming in are really great. So what made me interested in HR? Quite honestly, back when I was starting my career, I didn't know that you could have HR as a career. There definitely were not any degrees in HR, when I was doing it early on. But I kind of stumbled into it. I was doing some research for a company that I was working for as a mortgage clerk of all things. And it was very interesting to me. It gave me, I love working with people, but I'm not sure I really want to work with the public necessarily. So HR actually felt like a really good sweet spot for me where I can continue to work with people, but maybe not have to work with the general public. So that was really great. So I did come to the United States very young. I was 5 years old. And so, interestingly enough, my first place that I learned English was actually in Birmingham, Alabama. So my English that I learned early on in my childhood had a little bit of a Southern accent to it. And every once in a while, I'll kind of catch myself doing a little bit of a drawn out Southern accent as well. So, but, many years that I spent in Salt Lake, I think, corrected that for me. So why don't I talk a little bit about, if anyone is interested in the HR career, I think especially given, we're talking to teens and, folks that are, right now thinking about college, thinking about, what kind of careers they're looking to get into. There are absolutely, Temple has a wonderful HR degree. There's a lot of local schools here that, that really do focus in on it. I don't know if having an HR degree is necessarily required in order for you to get a job in HR. I will say having some, business acumen and, basic business knowledge, I think will absolutely be very helpful. I think over time, HR has really evolved from being more compliance related. When I was talking earlier about FMLA, that's kind of very heavy compliance, to really now being, advocates for the business and really understanding how to drive the business forward. So when you think about, what it is that HR does today, we really utilize our employees and our people resources to drive the business forward, to make sure that the business is successful. And having that business acumen, I think, is really, really critical. I probably would say these days more than, some of the compliance pieces that I think historically people have kind of associated with being in HR. I would say, I think, you all are at a very good point in terms of learning about this. So, it's wonderful that the PCDC is putting these sessions on for you so you can start getting an understanding of what possible careers are out there, because I think this is a really great time to start thinking about how do you start to lay some of this groundwork, right? If this, regardless of whether it's HR or any other industry, I think, starting to get connected with people, in the industries that you're interested in is a really great start. Reaching out to people, asking them if maybe you can grab a few minutes of their time. We have this thing that we, a lot of in the professional world, we call our network. And basically your network is the group of people that you can, that you've started to build relationships with, that can be, kind of your professional advisors, people that may work in the same industry with you, may work in your company, may work out of your other, outside of your industry. But when you start to build out your network, it becomes your lifeline and a good place for you to source good information when you become a professional. So, start building out think about, building out your network now. Who are the people that that do this work, or the work that you're interested in? It might be a cousin of someone or, it may be someone that you met through, one of these series. Always feel free to reach out and say, I'm interested in finding out more. Would you mind spending, a few minutes with me to talk about, to answer some questions I may have? That I think then turns into things like internship opportunities as well. So, you know, the best way to really see if it's something that you're interested in is to try it out. And internships are such an amazing way to do that. When you intern with a company, you get to see how everything works. You get to feel how what the environment is like. Are the people friendly? Are their values aligned with your values? John mentioned earlier that Comcast, is a partner with PCDC in the Crane building for the lift zones. I think that's one of the reasons why I love, working for Comcast. They are so committed to the communities that they're in. So, not only are we, one of the largest employers, but, the amount of money that Comcast reinvests back into the communities, I think is one of the reasons why I love working for Comcast, because you want to work for a company that has similar values to you and that are going to invest in things that are important to you. So, as a Chinese employee of Comcast, knowing that they're doing investments with PCDC and, and investing back into my community specifically is super important. And so internships allow you to kind of figure out, where the organization's values are, what the culture is like, and then whether or not you would enjoy doing it, right? And doing that job. And the beautiful thing about internships is that there's a beginning and an end. And so, at the end of that, if it's not for you, then, try another internship. And, it's a great way to kind of test everything out before you really commit to something. And then, so internships, like I said, really great way to get started in terms of your career. So, so a couple more questions that came in through the chat. So how did I adjust to life in the United States? I guess the good thing about coming here when I was 5, I don't know if I really had a choice to adjust to life. I will say, for me, growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, while, learning English in Birmingham and then growing up in Utah, I think one of the things that I feel like I do miss out on a lot is the cultural aspects of being around a Chinese community. My parents and our community, our small community of Chinese friends in Utah, did our best to recreate that for us kids, but it was always kind of hard. And so, as an adult, I'm kind of having to relearn all the traditions and the things that I should be doing on Chinese New Year, and how I should celebrate the Moon Festival and things of that nature. And I will say, for me, it's, I so appreciate it so much more now as an adult than maybe I did as a child, as a young person growing up. So thank you for that question. That was great. I'm seeing here, what qualities do you think a good employee should have? It's funny. I was actually just thinking about one of my favorite quotes. I don't know if it's a quote, but it's a poster that I've seen kind of floating around. When you think about a good employee, there's 10. I'll read this to you, and you guys let me know if this resonates with you. There's 10 things that require 0 talent. So, if you've not studied in a certain area, or, you don't have a degree, there's 10 things that you can do that really will impact, that question of being a good employee. Number 1 is being on time, having a good work ethic, what's, the effort that you put in, your body language, the amount of energy you bring to a job, your attitude, your passion. Being coachable is one that I would say is high up there for me. Being able to receive feedback, being comfortable asking for feedback, doing extra, and then being prepared. So, those are 10 things that, regardless of what your skill level is, everyone can do that. Everyone on this call has all of those things. So it's just a matter of, how do you bring that to the job that you're doing, and, the people that you're working with. So would I mind sharing my strengths and weaknesses? Oh, yes, I was going to say, like any self-deprecating Asian, I probably have a longer list of weaknesses than I can probably tell you my strengths. But, in terms of, of areas that I definitely feel like I can improve upon. I think my first one that I will admit to this team, to this group here, but maybe not necessarily to my coworkers back at the Comcast Center, is probably my financial acumen. You know, I will tell you, I don't like numbers. Whenever I see a spreadsheet and a whole bunch of numbers, it just, you know, it makes my mind bend in all sorts of different ways. And, you know, being in HR, it's not something that you necessarily need to have in terms of top skills. But, you know, what I talked about earlier, where being in HR, you do need to have a strong business acumen. So that is one that I'm constantly working on in terms of, you know, building that up and finding people that I feel like I can ask, you know, some of my stupid financial questions to, and, you know, being in a safe place for them to answer it without any judgment. The other I would say is in terms of, you know, weaknesses or areas that I can definitely improve upon. It would be, you know, one of the things that I'm learning is I like to think things through, and I currently work in a team where everyone is very much about just getting stuff done. And so one of my areas of weaknesses that I'm working on now is really, you know, how do I kind of keep up with the pace of my work team and making sure that I'm not falling too far behind. You know, they're a team that, you know, is all about action, and as soon as, you know, we get an assignment, they're already, you know, working through how to crank through it and get it done. Whereas I like to sit back and think about it, you know, how do we plan out the work? How do we phase it out? How do we make sure everyone knows what they're doing along the way, and almost kind of create a process around it? So that's one of the things that I would say, you know, I'm really trying to work on, is try to get my speed up a little bit more especially with the group that I'm working with now. You know, I think in terms of my strengths, you know, I've been told that I'm very approachable. You know, even though my title has vice president in it, I don't like to think that, you know, I'm an elevated level. I like to be on the same level as, you know, anyone that I'm able to talk to. I think sometimes people are a little intimidated by that title, and I always try my best to try to put everyone at ease. I enjoy, you know, one of the things I enjoy most is talking to people about, you know, what they're passionate about, and trying to figure out if there's a way that I can connect people into my network and help make their goals come true. So, you know, being a connector of people, you know, helping guide people through. I've been doing a lot of mentoring now that we've been working from home. And I really do enjoy that. I do enjoy talking to people early in their career who, you know, have questions about, you know, what's the best way to, you know, to handle a boss that maybe you don't get along with, or, you know, how do you talk to an employee that's not performing well? You know, and talking people through what some of their options are, and helping them think through, you know, how to solve some of those problems are some of the things that I really do enjoy. And I feel like, you know, I'm starting to do that more and more outside of my organization. And, you know, that for me has been a very fulfilling thing. Okay. What other questions do you have, or anything else that I can tell you about? So good question. Hear about my personal life and what I do outside of work. So, you know, a lockdown has been really tough. You know, haven't really done a whole lot, but maybe I'll talk about my my life prior to lockdown. So I really do love to travel a lot. And prior to lockdown, I was doing a lot of traveling to Europe. And then my family still is in Salt Lake City. So, I would go back to Salt Lake at least a few times a year and spend time with my family. You know, we recently got a new puppy. So I've been really busy with that. So I got a pandemic puppy, and he's a really sweet little guy. He's right here sleeping next to my feet. And then I also love to be outdoors, you know, hiking. We do a lot of camping. So next month, we're going to take our travel trailer up to New York and go to Lake George and spend a week doing some hiking and sightseeing around there. So summer is my favorite time of year. Being able to be outside, especially during this pandemic and being locked down. Being out, I definitely have such an appreciation for being outdoors now more than I ever have. And then, I will say one of the things that I have been doing during lockdown, something about this whole entire experience for me has been around the fact that, I've been missing so much of the comfort foods that my mom used to make. So I have been trying to figure out how to recreate a lot of her recipes, through watching a lot of YouTube channels or, finding recipes online, making things like, nulo mian or zongzi. Those have been really great challenges for me. So, I love to cook. And I definitely feel like during the pandemic, I've been cooking more Chinese food, more foods that I ate when I was a child, because I think during this time you want a lot more comfort. And so those are definitely the dishes that I've been doing, here during the pandemic. So another question here, let's see, wants to know if communication skills are more important than grades. He wants to hear from the HR side. Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting. I think there's definitely been a shift in terms of academics and, and grades. When we interview people for roles at Comcast, your experience, I feel like, is much greater than, going to, getting good grades at a top tier school. I think, we as an organization, I'll talk a little bit about, Comcast and our diversity, equality, and inclusion efforts. We're really starting to reevaluate, the value that we put on higher education and, and grades coming out of college. Knowing that, we have a lot of capable people who may not be afforded the opportunity to go to college or go to university, who can still add tremendous value to an organization. So we're really testing, our theory around, should we be focusing more on experiences that people have? And, some of the questions that we've seen here in terms of, some of the softer skills, can people work on a team? What does their communication abilities look like? Whether they're really good at written communication or verbal communication, people's ability to collaborate with others. Those tend to be more of what we've been putting value in versus, looking at resumes and just saying, hey, did this person go to a top tier school and what was their GPA? And it's interesting because even on the, on the technical side where I'm in now, where I work with a lot of our engineering folks, we're also seeing a little bit of that shift as well, where 10 years ago, having an amazing, out of this world GPA from MIT would absolutely get you in the door. That'll definitely get your resume looked at, but it's not a guarantee that it'll get you into the door. So I do think that, the workplace is starting to shift to try to figure out how to be more inclusive of folks, who may not necessarily have that opportunity to go to university or to college. Okay. Let's see, classify more as an extrovert or introvert. I am absolutely an introvert. I know it's really hard I know it's probably really difficult for you guys to imagine that, but for me, I am what they call selectively social. So I feel like I much prefer to make, one-on-one and deeper connections with people versus, being in a room full of 500 people and trying to shake hands with everyone before the end of the night. For me, I think being in HR, being, a leader, you have to kind of, be a little bit more extroverted. But my natural kind of at home, if you tonight, you'll probably find me sitting on the couch, watching TV because, going out on a Friday night is not, is not my, is not part of my introverted personality. So thank you for that question, because I think it's a really great question. And look, I think, if I don't know if I talked about this, I think, the other thing around, for you all to think about, as you embark on, college and your careers, is the ability to be adaptable and flexible, right? And so, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you are going to be asked to do in the course of your career where you may not be the most comfortable. But, part of, I think part of being a good employee, part of being a good colleague is trying to figure out how do you adapt and how do you, put yourself out there a little bit more and get out of your comfort zone. So, being, for me, being an introvert, when I first started in HR, I had to talk to tons of people. I had to go to job fairs. I had to shake hands with hundreds and hundreds of people who I met. And that definitely, was something out of my comfort zone, but I felt like I needed to do it in order for me to be successful in my job. And I got used to it, not the thing that I would say, my favorite thing to do, but I feel like, I got to a point where I can do it. And I think that's a little bit of being flexible and being adaptable. Question about, has the hiring process at Comcast changed since the pandemic? Yes, it has actually. Everything is virtual now. And, in some ways it's made it a lot easier. It's made our process a lot faster. So, prior to the pandemic, if we had a candidate that we wanted to talk to, let's say that was, out of town, we'd have to schedule for that person to fly into town, put them up in a hotel, get them scheduled and interviewing with a lot of different managers. The beauty of, this virtual world now is that, we can do this virtual environment. Everyone is doing it. So, in some ways it's leveled the playing field. But yeah, I mean, I think, our process, Comcast has not stopped hiring during the pandemic. If anything, we've continued to hire and continue to increase our staffing. This pandemic has really taught us to be flexible, kind of what I was talking about earlier. We had to shift, close to 5,000 employees here in the Philadelphia area from working in our offices to working from home within a 48-hour period of time. So, so that adaptability really worked in our favor. Question about immigrants whose first language is not English. How can they improve their communication skills? I would say you've got to keep practicing at it. I'll give you a really great example. So I have a cousin who, same thing, immigrated from Taiwan, but his parents first settled in the Oakland, California area. And he had a really tough time because, for him, settling in Oakland, everything around him was in Chinese, right? And so he did not have to necessarily use his English, that often. And, a lot of his friends were English, or a lot of his friends were Chinese speaking, when he would go to the store, everyone there spoke Chinese. And, it's funny because I'm a little envious because his Chinese is 1,000 times better than mine. But, ultimately his parents moved to Salt Lake. And, in some ways that was super helpful for him because then he was forced to utilize his English, on a more regular basis. But, like I said, he had the advantage of the fact that he had a really good foundational knowledge of Chinese before learning English. I unfortunately just came to the United States at 5, learned English, and have not done a whole lot in terms of my studies of Chinese. So, I would say for someone who's trying to practice, keep practicing, find ways to, find people that you feel comfortable with, that you can be vulnerable with, and keep practicing that, practicing your English with them. And, there's even some really great apps out there. I know I've got some friends that are on some language speaking apps where you can continue to practice that maybe in the comfort of your home if you're a little bit shy or, not wanting to do that so much in public. So yeah. Let's see, what else is there? Did your job require a lot of travel prior to the pandemic? It did not require a lot of travel prior to the pandemic. The beautiful thing about Comcast having its headquarters here in Philadelphia is that every single group or every person that I would need to meet with is already here on this campus. I will say, part of my job now that I have, once the pandemic is over, will require me to probably travel to India. We have about 2,000 engineers in Chennai, India, that I will ultimately need to go and visit. So I'm actually really excited about that. I've never been to India before, and our offices in Chennai are beautiful, and I can't wait to visit our employees there. Any tips for interviews? Yeah, I mean, I would say, my number one tip is do your research. Do your research in terms of, who are you interviewing with? So, the internet is an amazing thing these days, right? You can, you can pretty much Google folks that you're interviewing with. Most likely people in the professional world have some sort of a LinkedIn profile where you can start to, where you can look at their background. One of the things I always love about, when I talk to people is when you can make some sort of a connection. So whether it's someone you know in common or something that you do where you have some sort of commonality. I think that always breaks the ice. So, talking about, your favorite restaurants in Philly or the last concert you go to, I think is always super helpful to break the ice, because I think, the one thing to keep in mind is, the interviewer is probably just as nervous as you are, right? So, finding a way to make a connection early on breaks the ice, makes people a little bit more relaxed. And I think then you shine more once you're relaxed and that ice is broken. So, so that's one thing I would say, definitely do your research to see if there's any commonalities that you have. What is one thing I wish someone would have told me when I was younger? What are some advice that you offer those that are still in high school? Oh gosh. I think my biggest regret is that I did not, I'm not bilingual. Not being able to speak Chinese. I feel like, if I were bilingual, I just can't imagine, the opportunities that I would have, would have loved to be able to have go down to Taiwan and, and do an assignment there, or even in China, or, somewhere else. I would also say, I think, growing up, I think sometimes we tend to be a little bit more rebellious, and, we're quick to dismiss what our parents tell us and their advice. There's definitely some times now as a much older adult, I think back and I'm like, gosh, my mom was right about this, or my dad was right about that. And so, I would say, for those of you, I'm sure you are all very obedient and respectful children, unlike myself, but, don't dismiss what your parents, what their advice is to you. I think, number one, they've been down that road, they have the experience. And know that your parents always want, what's best for you and have your best interest at heart. I know it doesn't always feel like that. I know for me, there were times where I'm like, really, I feel like sometimes you're doing this just because you don't like me. But when you get older, you start to realize and appreciate, that relationship. So, let's see. And then for those of you in high school, I would say, definitely start putting yourself out there and, start thinking about, and think about, ways to explore the things that you're interested in. If you have time to, spend and, shadow someone that is, in a profession that you're excited, that you're, thinking about, you can start doing that now. You don't have to wait till after college. I feel like by the time, people get through college, a lot of these things are already kind of set in stone. So if there's things that you're interested in now, start looking around and seeing, where can you possibly, shadow someone for a day and see what it's like to, to have, to do some, to walk a day in their shoes, set up, especially in this virtual environment. It's so easy for, anyone to set up time with someone and, and talk to them, through Zoom or through Teams. I think sometimes, prior to the pandemic, it was like, it was, more of a challenge to set something up, find the right time, et cetera, travel to there. So take advantage of this time that, a lot of us are still at home. We're still haven't gone back to the workplace or to school yet, to start to make those connections and to start to think about building out your network. That's, something I would say, you could do now. Do you see a pay gap between men and women? Really great question. In addition to, men and women, to the gender pay gap, we also look at pay gaps between, people of color. So, our various ethnicities, Black, Latinx, Asians, etc. I'm really happy to say that, Comcast is so focused on this, and we're really closing on that pay gap between ethnicities. We don't see it as much between men and women. But I will tell you that, when you look at especially at Comcast, when you look at, kind of how pay ranks across people of color, Asians tend to do a lot better than some of the other ethnic groups. And so, so it's something that we're constantly working on. And I know it's one of our biggest commitments to really close that pay gap between men and women, and then of course the ethnicities. Okay. All right. So I think we're going to take maybe a couple more questions. So were parents more relaxed or strict when I was younger? So I definitely would say, compared to my brother, my parents were very strict with me. Being the oldest daughter, I didn't get to do a lot of the things that my brother, I will say, got away with. And look, I mean, I think especially for Chinese women, I think it's a little, I feel like there was a little bit more of a challenge, right? There were times where my mom wanted me to learn certain things about, keeping a good household, being able to do the laundry, being able to make rice and, cook dishes. And, it was really hard because I didn't understand really why my brother wasn't, why she wasn't teaching my brother these same things. So you still see a little bit of that gender inequality. I think, at least I saw it in my household. And, that's kind of, I would say, where maybe my parents were a little bit more strict. I would say, compared to other Asian parents, my parents were definitely not that strict. Like I was saying before, for them, what was important for them was, for us to carry on their legacy of, of owning a restaurant and, being an entrepreneur and, working for yourself. So going to college, I think, my dad was really happy that I decided to go, but, it was not kind of the primary focus. So I think in some ways my parents were a little bit not so traditional in that respect, but, but my mom wanting me to be a good wife and being able to do certain things, for my family. And, I feel like in some ways that's where I saw some of the strictness and maybe some of the more traditional expectations that were placed on me. Did you get to make most decisions for yourself? That is a really great question. And yes, I did. I think that is also, I think that's also a little bit of the challenge of, being, coming from, being an immigrant into a new country. You do have to figure out a lot of things on your own. And, I really do contribute a lot of, my sensibilities, my rational thinking to my parents. So, I'll give them all the credit for that. But, I think early on, I think being the good daughter, I think I earned a lot of trust with my parents. So as I got older, I think they felt better that, I was going to make good decisions for myself. The only decision I will say my parents probably didn't agree with, which is my decision not to have any kids. So my parents were very upset about, not being able to have any grandkids. But I think they got over that as soon as my brother started having kids. So I think as long as there were grandkids in the family, they were going to be happy and fine. So that definitely put the pressure off of me. But I'm not, so I've been with my my partner for almost 20 something years. We're not married. We don't have any kids. And, I think, early days, my mom and dad would constantly ask, or my mom specifically, less my dad, would ask, when would I get married? I need to get married. And I was very insistent on the fact that we didn't need to get married. We were fine. And then ultimately my mom got used to it. And now she rarely teases me or says anything to me about it. So I hope I was going to say, I don't know if there's any other questions. I know we're kind of coming up on time. So, let me know what else, what other questions you may have, or anything else I can clarify for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Alice. I hear a lot from your background, and I'm very impressed about your experience. So thank you very much. So thank you everyone to attend our PCDC career workshop as well.
Yeah.
So hope all you guys will have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys come back to our next career workshop.
Thank you. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. I had so much fun. I love all of your questions. And, if you guys have anything else that you want to talk about, or any other questions about HR or Comcast, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Like I said, I love this part of, being able to connect with the community and help people as much as I can. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks again.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good weekend. Thank you, everyone.